Okay, so I figured out that the word that I was looking for the last video was shipping container. Shipping container. So Eddie, I don't know if you want to go in and replace all the times that I said something other than shipping container with shipping container. I'll give you a clean read. Shipping container. Okay, and I'm going to do a few more just so Eddie has them, so that Eddie, don't put this in the final video. Shipping container. Shipping container. Shipping container? Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Eddie. I'm starting over again. Hello everyone. This is the next installment of Dan, Eddie. Hey, guys, how are y'all? My name's Taylor Swift. Oh, sorry, I've been in character for so long. I don't even know when the character ends and when me begins. So in the last installment, I witnessed a drug deal between the LaFleur dynasty and the Reddies, which are two rival gang families that I am going undercover as Taylor Swift to attempt to do a sting operation with Big Red and bring down both of the families. So I was very alarmed because at the end of that encounter, they made a statement that seemed to be, that they were going to kill me, which was confusing to me because I thought that they thought that I was dead. So I was thinking when at first I kind of forgot about that. And then I ran home with, I just ran all the way home and I was laying in bed and I was like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. And then I was like, wait a minute. Don't they think that I'm already dead? So then very next morning, I flipped open the burner phone and I called Officer Frank. And I said, Officer Frank, you got some splaining to do. Sorry if that was a little offensive. Officer Frank, you have some explaining to do to me. And Officer Frank was like, for the last time, please don't say my name on the phone. This is supposed to be anonymous. And I said, I don't care anymore about anonymous. I am in danger. My life is in danger because you have not been fully transparent with me about what's going on. And I demand to know all the answers about everything that's going on. This is my life. So he said, all right, come into the office. So I came into his office and I was like, listen up, Buster Brown. You need to explain to me right now what's going on. Why do the LaFoes and the Reddies think that I'm alive? Why are they negotiating with me? Why am I apparently worth $2 billion for the original model cargo thing that was invented by the inventor of the cargo thing? What is going on? And Uncle Frank said, buddy, Uncle Frank, he's not my uncle. God. If he was my uncle, I would have been molested. So, Uncle Frank says, God fucking damn it. Mr. Frank, Officer Frank says, buddy, you're asking me like I know the answers to this. I don't know what's going on either. You're supposed to be the one who's finding out what's going on. So I was like, well, why do they think that I'm alive? And he was like, you don't even know that they think that. Are you sure that they were talking about you? And I was like, yes, I'm sure, because Pierre said Dan's off limits. And then Monsieur said, oui, it doesn't matter, And then they shook on it and said, deal. So they're talking about me. They're going to try to kill me and they're going to hand me over to the big Reddies. So Uncle Frank, God fucking damn it, Officer Frank said, that is odd. And I was like, yeah, it is. So either you're not telling me something that's going on, either they know something that we don't know that they know, or they're talking about something else, and I'm mistaken. So he was like, well, I guess you better find that out. And I was like, well, how am I going to find that out if I don't want to blow my cover. I don't want them to know that I'm alive if they still think that I'm dead. But if they know that I'm alive, then I would rather get ahead of this situation. So Officer Frank, I got it that time, was like, well, what's the next move? What do you want to do then? And I was like, I don't know. You're the Officer Frank. You're supposed to tell me what the next move is. So he said, why don't we just continue with the plan as is, and then we'll sort of play whack-a-mole. So if another problem arises, then we'll whack-a-mole that problem when it comes up. So I was like, Officer Frank, I can't live like that. You know, I have a lot of anxiety. I will have a 24-hour panic attack about this until we figure it out. And it will ruin every waking moment of my life. I won't be able to eat. You know, I'll start having stomach problems, you know, and if I start having stomach problems, then I can't film videos. It's going to get in the way of my whole thing. Okay? So we need to figure this out right now. So Officer Frank said, okay, fine. And he gets his office phone and he goes, beep, boop, beep, bop, beep, boop, bop, bop, beep, boop, bop, 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 beep, boop, bop, 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 bop. And I'm like, who are you calling? And he says, shh. So it goes, ring, ring. And Officer Frank is like, hello. May I please speak to Dan Henschel, please? And there's a thing on the line that's like, rah, 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 rah. So I was like, so he said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, see you later. So I said, who was that on the phone? Who were you asking about me, and what did they say? And he said, I didn't call anyone. I just did that to calm you down so that you would relax. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And Uncle fucking goddamn it, Officer Frank, Eddie, this one might have to be a Patreon only. This is ridiculous. Not that the Patreon videos are less quality than the regular. So Officer Frank said, you know what? I understand. Here's what we'll do. We'll write you a prescription for some Valium, and then hopefully that'll relax you. And I was like, oh, that's going to relax me plenty. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted. So I went home and took some of the pills. And then I was like, wait a minute. So what am I doing next? And Officer Frank said, you're going to just do what you were going to do before. So go back to the big Labowski and keep working that, you know. So I said, all right. So I put the Taylor Swift Get Up on, and I went to the bar, Emergency Vet Bar and Grill. And I said, hi, y'all! It's Taylor Swift! I'm back! And Big Labowski was like, hey, oh man, I've missed you so much. And I was like, yeah, I missed you too. What's going on tonight? And he said, well, you know, I was thinking maybe if you want, we could go see a movie, and then maybe we could go back to my place. So I was like, oh my gosh, all right, if that's what you want, then sure, okay. What movie do you want to see? And he was like, well, you know, I was thinking about this movie, Ella McKay. It looked pretty good. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard about that. You know something? Actually, I just realized I'm busy tonight. And he said, oh really? And I said, yeah. So, why don't we skip the movie? Let's just go right back to your place, and then we can, you know. And he said, all right. So the Big Labowski went in Big Red's office. He said, hey, Red. Big Red opened the door. He said, what do you want? And Big Labowski said, listen, I'm going to take off early tonight. And Big Red was like, oh, yeah, you're getting your pickle whistled, huh? And Big Labowski was like, okay, lower the volume. And Big Red was like, yeah, that's my boy. I knew you had it in you, big man. So Big Lebowski was like, yeah, whatever. Can I just go home now? And he was like, well, did you count the register? I still don't have a voice for Big Red, to be honest. Did you count the register? And Big Lebowski said, no. So we went back over to the bar, and he was huffing and puffing. He pulled out the register, and he was like, well, we can reschedule for another night if you got something to do. I don't want to hold you up. It's like, no, it's all right. I canceled all of that. So what you doing there? And he was counting the money in the register, and he said, I'm counting the money that's in the register. And I said, oh yeah, that sounds pretty easy. He said, well, it's not really, because, and then he looked around to see if anybody was listening. And he was like, so, to tell you the truth, Big Red has a sort of special way that he likes us to do it. So I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And he said, Big Red likes if we have sort of a money laundering operation here. And I was like, oh, really? And he said, yeah. So basically we cook the books, because Big Red is a drug dealer, and he also deals prostitutes and other firearms and things of that nature. So I said, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And he said, yeah. So we have to sort of funnel money in as though it's business expenses. And this was when I started to be like, you know what, because he's mansplaining to me what money laundering is, and I already know. So that was really eye-opening for me. I was like, wow. I guess the ladies weren't making it up, huh? Because I always thought they were just making it up. I was like, shut up. You don't have any problems. You're not oppressed. Shut up! So then I was like, man, I guess it's true. Sorry. So I said, I do know what money laundering is. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mansplain. And I said, no, it's all right. I like when people explain things to me. I think some folks don't like it, but I do. So he said, okay. So now I'm like, well, maybe I can, let's see if we can get some more information. So I said, you said that Big Red sells hookers and blow and guns? And he was like, yep, that's basically it. And I said, well, I have always wanted to be a drug dealer. I've always wanted to be in the mafia. Do you think that maybe I could start working for him? And Big Labowski was like, oh, you don't want to work for Big Red. Trust me, he's gonna eat you alive, literally. And I was like, oh, he's fine. I had brothers growing up. I'm not talking about like brothers. Eddie, you have to take all this out. Eddie, take all this out. I had brothers growing up. I know what it's like. So I don't care about some man. And he said, Taylor, you don't want to get involved in this, because I'll be honest, the day that I got involved with this mafia bullshit was the worst day of my life. It ruined my life. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I mean, you make money, you have safety, you have belonging, you have a sense of belonging, a sense of family. And he was like, we can't talk about this here. Let's go home to my place, because they have microphones and cameras here everywhere. They record everything. And not only that, but they have an AI that transcribes everything from the voice recordings. And then they have the AI search to see if there's anything that Big Red would get mad about. And the AI gives him a summary sheet at the end of every day. So I was like, oh, damn. Okay. So, all right. So, Big Labowski, we head back to his car. And I radio and I go, we're going to Big Labowski's car. He's taking me back to his place. Over. And Big Labowski was like, what did you just... And I said, oh, no, I was sneezing. Achoo! Achoo! We're going to Big Labowski's car. Achoo! We're going to go back to his place. He's like, bless you. I said, thank you. I think I forgot to mention this, but I have, so I had put on, some of these guys, and basically what they rigged up it was actually pretty neat, because my breasts were 2 rolls of cassette tape, magnetic tape. So it was basically like a big tape recorder apparatus that I strapped to my chest, and the breasts would turn like this, and the magnetic tape would run through, and it would record everything. It was bulky, but it was okay. It was C cups, cassette cups. Sometimes I'm like, hey, this would be a funny joke, but I don't actually have the joke. I just have like the general tone of what the joke should be, or an idea of what the joke should be. So if you guys have any funny suggestions for what a joke could have been there, like C cups, something to do with this cup size, and also cassette tapes and recording things. I don't know, guide, something. And then Eddie, we can go in with the AI and maybe use some of the suggestions. So I pressed because in order to activate it, you have to press your, thing. So I was like, and he said, what's that sound? What mechanical thing did you just click in your chest? And I said, oh, this is just my, because I do a lot of singing and dancing. I have to have what's it called? The Corvette. What's it called? Cabaret. Corsage. Croissant. What's it called? Corset. So I have a special corset that I have to go like this, and it does the whole thing. And so I was just trying to explain it so that he'd be bored by what I was saying. He was like, yeah, all right. So I was like, oh, yeah. So I get in his car, and he has a kind of a shitty car, to be honest. It's a Subaru Outback, but a very old one. It's and it's purple. So I was like, man, what the hell is this car? And he was like, sorry, I've always loved Subarus. And I was like, I bet you do, you fucking beep. Hey, listen, everybody got mad at me for saying it the last time, so I was like, fine. But I will say, every time that I have said it, I think it has been earned. And it's been for, wham! I like to make it pack a punch, So anyway, we get in his Subaru Outback, and he starts driving me to where he lives. And I gotta tell you, I really don't like when other people are in control of me. So I like to always drive myself places. I like to always bring my car places, because, I don't like to get picked up by people. I don't like to get, any of that, because I really need to be in control of my own, getting out of the situation or getting into the situation. If my life and my plans are at the whims of someone else who's just like, oh yeah, we can leave whenever, I'll pick you up and I'll bring you up, like, no. So I get very anxious when that happens. So I start to say to Big Labowski, how far away do you live? Is this gonna be, what are you talking here? And he was like, oh no, it's fine. I just live right here, right up the road here in Barstow. And I was like, you don't mean Barstow, all the way up there. He's like, oh yes, no, it's not too bad. This time of night, it's you just get on the 15 and there's no traffic, so it's fine. And I was like, Barstow is in the middle of the fucking desert, nowhere. Why am I in the desert again? I'm an ostrich again. Everybody liked my ostrich sound in the other video. So, Jesus Christ almighty. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, aren't I? It's okay. I've accepted it. So I'm like, Big Labowski, I cannot go all the way to Barstow. Just let me out here. He said, no, come on, it's fine. I mean, if I let you out here, the coyotes are going to get you. So I was like, God fucking damn it. No, I can't go all the way to Barstow. And I started having a panic attack and I started crying. And he's like, whoa. And I say, just fucking. And then I remember that Mr. Freddie, what's his name? Fargo? What's the guy's name? The Mr. Frank? Yeah, Officer Frank. Gave me the Happy Boys, the pills. So I was like, oh, go home. That's me taking the pills, by the way. So then I was like, oh, Barstow. And Big Labowski was like, you good? And I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, I'm good. I never been better in my whole life than I am right now. Big Labowski was like, okay. So it's time, like I said, when you're on these pills, time starts to move in strange ways. So time, I don't know how much time passed, but eventually we did get to his house in Barstow, which was a fucking shithole. It sucked ass. It was right next to the highway. So, and he was like, oh, my grandfather had this land before they built the interstate, and then they built the interstate, and they offered him a bunch of money to move, but he didn't want to move, so then they just built it right next to his house to spite him. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care about any of this. So then I realized I had to change, because the tape, I think I just saw a guy in his car sip out of a flask while he was waiting to turn left. I don't want to rat him out, but wee woo. Pigs! There's nothing worse than a fucking pig. Sorry, I've been taking some of Officer Frank's Happy Boys today, so I've been a little. So the annoying thing about using the magnetic tape, cassette tape for the breasts, is that you have to change the tape, because it's not like digital where you can just record forever and ever and ever. So I had a bunch of extra tapes in the purse that I had. That was like my supplies. So in my purse was a bunch of tapes, a gun, mace, an umbrella, which was just in case it rained, some chewing gum, I think that's it. So I was like, shit, because I can't just lift up my shirt and replace the tape while we're driving. So I was like, let's just try to make sure that he doesn't say anything good until we get in the house and I can go to the bathroom and change I don't know why I'm doing the accent, even though I'm talking about my inner monologue. I think it's because it's like Daniel Day-Lewis, I don't know where does the character end and where does Dan begin. Don't know. So then, of course, right then, Big Labowski says, so I started working for Big Red back a couple years ago, and I was like, hang on a minute. I need to make a phone call. So I go beep boop beep bop 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 beep boop beep boop on my phone and call Officer Frank. And Officer Frank picks up and is like, what are you doing? Why are you calling me? You're going to blow this whole thing. And I was like, hi there, Grandma. How y'all doing? And Officer Frank goes, fucking hell, man. Did you have to call me specifically? Couldn't you have just opened the phone and pretended to call me? And I was like, how's Buster doing? How's Ding Dong? How's everything down on the farm? And he was like, what the fuck are you even saying? You are terrible. Not only are you terrible, you're terrible at accents. You're terrible at improvisational comedy. You're terrible at plot. You're terrible at world building. You're terrible at every single thing that you're trying to do. And I said, oh my gosh, well, tell me why. Tell me. I hope that I can have another glass of your iced tea. He said, did you my iced tea? I said, yeah, your grandma's famous iced tea. And Officer Frank was like, what's iced tea? And Big Labowski also looked over and was like, what's iced tea? And I was like, oh, just some iced tea. And I said, okay, Grandma, I gotta go, bye-bye. Because we started pulling into his house. And so Big Labowski's like, what's iced tea? And I said, oh, I was just, I didn't want to blow the accent, but iced tea is how you would say it with that accent. So I was like, iced tea. And he was like, no, I don't know what that is. And I said, it's tea that's assed. He said, is that a southern thing or something? And I said, yeah, some people, it's definitely more in the South than out here in South. Oh, fucking hell, Eddie. How many more of these do we have to do? Okay, sorry. Ass tea. Hey, sorry everybody, had a little bit of a freak out there, but we're back. And everything's fine. So where were we in the story? I believe that I had just gotten off of my fake phone call with Officer Frank, and the Big Labowski was driving me to his house. And we had the conversation about ass tea, which of course was actually iced tea, but I could not. Okay, we don't have to do a recap. We just saw it. Hey guys, sorry, had a little bit of a freak out there, but we're good now. We're back to normal. So we pulled into the Big Labowski's house in Barstow. And then immediately I hear from the yard. And I was like, oh, do you have a dog? And he was like, no. And there was a dog just going like, rah, 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 rah. So I said, well, what's that there? And he said, your guess is as good as mine. So the dog was, climbing on the window like, rah, 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 rah. And Big Labowski said, hang on a minute, this happens all the time. So he opened the door real fast and went, thunk! And the dog was like, and I got out of the car and I was like, oh my God. Is that dog okay? And I was like, or he was like, I don't know. And we went into the house. So it's like, damn, they really do things different out here in Barstow. And for all the people who are like, the dog got up and ran away and was fine and happy and then went and had a big old steak dinner and cuddled with his mommy. Is that what you wanted to hear? Well, that's not the way the world works. But I'll make it up for your sake. So we got into his house. And I was like, excuse me, I gotta use the bathroom. So I pulled my shirt up. And I quickly replaced the cassettes. Pressed again. And went back out. Big Labowski was in the kitchen. He was like, so do you want anything? Can I get you something? And I was like, all I want to know is your life story and how you came to work for Big Red. So how did you first meet Big Red? And he said, oh, I was, I used to, and then I said, excuse me, actually, can y'all make sure that when you answer the question, you speak loudly and clearly? and that you also rephrase what the question was at the beginning of your answer. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, when I say, how did y'all meet Big Red? You would say, well, I met Big Red blank this way, and he was like, why? I said, I just like when people talk like that. So he said, okay, well, I met Big Red when I first moved to, I'm slipping into the accent again. He said, I met Big Red when I first moved to Los Angeles. I was homeless at the time. And my heart sunk. And I was like, you were homeless? And he was like, yeah, it was a really rough period of my life, I moved out here because I, just thought it would be a better opportunity for a better life. So I came out here and I was on the street, on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I used to hang out by the Steve Harvey Star. And I was like, oh, I did a video once at the Steve Harvey Star where I was the Joker. And he was like, what? And I said, I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. I apologize. Continue. And he said, so I was so I was living on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and I sat next to the Steve Harvey Star. And I would ask people for money and things, and it was a rough life. And so I was what some would consider a crackhead. And I said, that's a terrible thing to say. I would never say something like that about people who are struggling with homelessness. I understand. Everybody has a hard time. And I said, well, excuse me, I don't want to be rude, but it seems to me like all homeless people are schizophrenic and are crazy. And that's the reason why they're homeless. So why are you, as someone who is lucid and relatively normal, I mean, you're stupid, but other than that, you don't seem like a normal homie, which is what I call homeless person, homies. Whoa, Eddie, we have to take that out. Eddie, you've got to take that out, okay? So why are you homeless and you're normal? And he said, well, to tell you the truth, I used to be Elmo. And I was like, what? And he said, Elmo, the character. And I was like, what do you mean you used to be Elmo? And he said, well, I played Elmo on the TV show, Sesame Street. And I was like, you played Elmo? And I accidentally went out of the voice. And then I was like, you played Elmo? And he said, yep. And I said, can you do the voice then? And he said, I'm Elmo. I can't do the voice because I wasn't Elmo, but he did the voice perfectly. And I was like, holy moly, mother of mama. That's pretty amazing. Can I get your autograph? And he was like, sure. So I had him sign, piece of paper. So then I said, well, then if you were such a successful Elmo, why did you have to become homeless in Los Angeles? And he said, well, I don't know exactly how to explain this. I did something. And I was like, what do you mean you did something? He said, I did something that was not good. And I said, well, like what? Like what? And he said, he started crying. And he said, I don't want to talk about it. And then all of a sudden my phone dinged. And I got an alert from Citizen. And it was an alert that said, there's a sex offender 0.0 miles away from you right now. And it was a picture of the Big Labowski. So I was like, whoa, hang on a minute. And Big Labowski said, I'm sorry, no, please don't leave me like everybody does. I don't know why he's Southern now. He's not Southern. I'm Southern. I'm Taylor Swift is Southern, but I'm Taylor Swift and I'm Dan, and Taylor Swift is me. So I went into the bathroom. I ran into the bathroom, and Big Lebowski was like, no, wait, don't leave me. Everybody else leaves me. And I was like, I'm sorry, I gotta just 1 second. I went in the bathroom, and I went, boo, boo, beep, boo, 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 beep, boo, beep, boo, 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 beep, boo, boo, boo. Called Officer Frank. And I said, Officer Frank. And Officer Frank's like, what do you want now? And he's not Southern either. What do you want now? And I said, Officer Frank, you know Big Lebowski is a sex offender? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? And he said, well, it wasn't relevant. And I said, yes, it is relevant. I'm alone in this man's house right now. I was alone in his car. You've got to tell me when people are sex offenders. And Officer Frank was like, Dan, I'm sorry, but this really didn't seem like it was relevant to the case. And I have a feeling that what he did may have some relevance to the case. And then he said, I'm sorry, I have been having a lot to drink, so I gotta go. And then I heard Officer Frank's wife in the background go like, are you talking to that girl again? And he said, honey, no, I'm not. And then the phone hung up. So I was like, oh my God. Once again, now I am all on my own out here. So I exited the bathroom, and I went back out, and Big Lebowski was crying still. And so I said, all right, you have 30 seconds to convince me why I should stay in this house and not immediately grab a shotgun and blow your damn head off. And he said, it was a misunderstanding. And I was like, oh, really? What was the misunderstanding? You thought that, pretty colors. Sorry, happy boys are affecting me. I said, well, what do you mean you thought what? And Big Lebowski said, so, the reason that I left Elmo was because Big Red convinced everyone at the station that I had diddled one of the child actors. And I said, but you didn't do that? And he said, no, I didn't. But Big Red told everybody that I did, and told the police. And he fabricated evidence so that I would be indebted to him forever, because I wouldn't be able to get a job. That's why I had to move out in the middle of the desert, because there's nowhere else that I can find an apartment. Can't live in Los Angeles, because Los Angeles famously does not legally allow sex offenders to live there. Did you know that? And I said, but why would he do something like that? And he said, because I made the mistake of trying to become his friend. Okay, you lock the car twice, max. You don't have to keep honking it. So I said, okay, I'm listening. Would y'all mind speaking a little more into my breasts? And he said, so when I met Big Red, he was very lost in life. And he was getting a divorce from his wife. His kids never wanted to see him again. He had gotten fired from his job. And he was a nice guy, you know? He was fun. He was fun to be around. He was my best friend, you know? I mean, we would drink together and we would go do stuff together, and it was just so nice because you know, back then, I don't know what happened. Maybe he hit his head real hard or something, or maybe I don't know. But it was like overnight, all of a sudden he switched and became evil. And I don't know what caused it, because all of a sudden, you know, he started acting like a totally different person. Started being very mean to me. He started experimenting with crime. Thought that was Big Red, sorry. And so he started experimenting, you know, with small things first, drug dealing, you know. But then he escalated to armed robbery, you know, so he would mug people, he would rob banks, violence, crimes. And one day I was like, Big Red, what are you doing? You're gonna ruin your life doing this. I don't understand why you want to do this stuff. Why do you want to hurt people? And I'll never forget the night that he just looked at me and he said, because it's fun. And so it got to a point where I was very uncomfortable being around him, and I was uncomfortable, you know, enabling him. So I said, all right, Big Red, I've really enjoyed our friendship, but you are going off the rails. You're becoming a person who I cannot endorse. I have to start over. I'm quitting Elmo, and I'm moving to Los Angeles. And I'm gonna start a new life. So I packed my bags. The very next morning, I go to the airport. TSA stops me and says, "Sir, excuse me. Would you mind talking to us for a second?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Sure. What's going on?" They put my hands behind my back, clicked the cuffs together. They said, "You're under arrest." And I said, "What did I do?" And he read the charges. And it was the most heinous possible crime that a person could ever do. And of course I denied it. Of course I said I didn't do this. I don't know what you're talking about, but everybody says that when they get arrested. So eventually, I cut a deal, got a plea deal. I was out in a couple of years. I had nobody and nothing. I begged for money on the side of the road. Got on a Greyhound bus and came out to Los Angeles. Because at least it was a little warmer there when I slept on the street. And then one day, I was sleeping next to Steve Harvey's Hollywood Walk of Fame star. And I got woken up by a coin that somebody flicked right onto the top of my head. And I was like, yeah, thanks. Then I got a splash in the face with some liquid. And I looked up, and it was Big Red, smiling down at me like the devil. And he said, long time no see, pal. And I said, Red, I haven't seen you in years. What the hell's going on? And he said, get up. You work for me now. That's it. That's the story of how I met Big Red. And he's the type of guy where the only way that I'll be free from him is when I'm in my coffin. But until then, I'm a sex offender for life. I have nothing to my name. I have no one. He owns me. So I looked at Big Labowski and I was like, oh, whoa. That's heavy. That's heavy stuff. Okay, what's going on here? There's some weird turn happening here. Guys, what are you doing?